All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to our session today on gender and leadership within the independent media sector in the Arab world, not just about surviving all forms of authoritarianism, but also about how we are leading the way for an independent, vibrant independent media sector within the region. I'm Fatemah Farag, a journalist of many years within the region, and also 11 years ago, being inspired by the revolution that took place in Egypt, also the publisher and founder of Welad Elbalad, which is a company dedicated to local media development. It's my pleasure to be with you here today and to tell you actually that the idea for this session was seeded in a small town in Upper Egypt maybe 10 years ago. I was talking to a young woman journalist at the time, debriefing her on all of the challenges that she faced with the local government in obtaining information, with sources, all of those challenges that she faced within the workplace and in doing her job. And it was a long session, as you can probably imagine, but after it was done, she told me, but of course you realize that's not all that I face, that by the time I enter this office, I'm already frazzled. I have to think about what to wear, what my parents will think, what my fiancé is expecting of me. Will I be harassed on the bus that I'm taking into work? The daily challenges, and it was sort of an aha moment, even though everything that she said was something that I knew well, to realize that we actually take a lot for granted in what it is to do a day's work and what it is to live a day of life for a woman working within this field in our region and perhaps in many parts of the world as well. So 10 years forward, here we are in Perugia, and I am joined on this panel by some amazing women who are actually leading the way, have not only faced these challenges, but are leading the way for others to do so as well. To my left is Rawan Damen, who is the executive director of Daraj. Daraj is, and she will talk to us more about what Daraj does, but really sort of the center of leading the way for investigative journalism within our region. Rawan, very pleasurable to have you on board. To Rawan's left is Nora Younis. Nora Younis comes from Egypt, and she is also a veteran journalist in her own right, a leader within the mainstream before establishing AlManassa in Egypt, and she's the founder and editor-in-chief of AlManassa. And to the far left, coming from Lebanon, is Diana Moukalled, who is also a veteran journalist and the founder and co-founder and chief editor of Daraj, an independent, regional independent website based in Beirut. So, welcome, ladies. And we begin with Diana from our far left. If you could talk to us a bit about your experience as a journalist and also as a media leader, contextualized within the situation within your country in Lebanon.
Thank you, Fatemah. Thank you for having me in this lovely panel, and thank you for the audience. I'm Diana Moukalled. I'm a Lebanese journalist. I've been in the field for the past 32 years. I wasn't only covering Lebanon, I have covered regional and international topics, especially focusing on democracy, focusing on women issues. Since the early 90s, when I started working in a mainstream media with all the limitations that controlled how you cover news and how you do stories, I worked on women issues, and I stress on women issues at that time because we didn't focus much on the wider perspective, which is gender, which is feminism, that evolved with time and with space. In mainstream media, the ability of us to cover properly what kind of injustices women and minorities are facing in the region was very limited. We used to be able to cover sort of violence against women, but without the broader perspective of the institutionalized discrimination, whether in law, whether in society, facing the patriarchy, facing script religious leaders and how they are interfering in how women should be. So all the restrictions that I carried with me in the past few decades, after the Arab Spring, after 2011, and the possibility of having independent voice, it was a major factor for me and my co-founders that Daraj, which means, it's a noun meaning steps. So we wanted a way out of the whole situation that we've been to. And part of it was discrimination against women. It was discrimination against LGBT. It's all the freedoms that were intimidated in the Arab world. We wanted our platform to have a voice, and not only to have a voice just to cover, it's actually to help young female journalists have their own voices. And I was telling you before the session how I tried, me and my partners and the whole news team that work in Daraj, not only to have a space for well-established feminist voices, but also to give space for those who are still discovering their voice, either by covering stories or by reflecting what they are facing. So Daraj is a platform that is based in Beirut. It's addressing Arab speakers, and our stories cover a wide spectrum of geography and topics at the same time. So we have female journalists, writers from all over the Arab world and even beyond. So to us, reflecting stories from Egypt to Lebanon to Syria, we see intersectionality in the challenges and in topics. And this is key to our newsroom. Me, as a person who survived mainstream media with all the limitations, who experienced what is sexual harassment being part of the daily life of a newsroom, and trying to create a newsroom that is free, or at least trying to be free, or at least to know how to react when something like this happens, is a major challenge, because we are still living in an authoritarian regime in the Arab world. We still have political challenges. When you try to train new journalists, when you try to give them voices, they are also facing all this kind of intimidation. So to have their own voice without all the restrictions that we used to experience is something liberating, not only for them, but also for me. Because the mainstream media and the Arab world are still functioning with the same burden that used to control in the 90s and the 20s and afterwards. If you look at the mainstream media, it's still the voice of the authority, it's still the voice of those who are in power, especially when it comes also to women. The way women issues is being treated, besides the facade that you have social change within in the Gulf or other areas, trying to promote women faces as if they are really progressing, it's just the facade. No real change when it comes to social structure, when it comes to legal issues. Of course, there are some advancement, but it's not enough. We still have media that is promoting regimes and the way they perceive women's rights and gender rights from their own perspective, which is authoritarian by default. So what we try in independent media, it's not only facing corruption, intimidation, and all injustices, it's to keep the voice of feminist movement in the Arab world as it should be. As a political movement, it's not only isolated, it's not isolated from the main currents that is happening in the Arab world. It's part of the political struggle that we keep facing. I don't know if I've managed to summarize. It's already 7 minutes, but it's a very complicated issue. And I think this is where we are today.
Can I ask you, you've been talking about changing the narrative and how the independent sector and Daraj as a part of that is changing the narrative around women's issues in the content. But how also do you do that in terms of the women that are working with Daraj? They face, as they step out, again, the same cultural challenges that most others face as well. They come from different sectors within Lebanon. Intersectionality here is relevant. So how do you find the experience within Daraj empowering to them?
As I mentioned earlier, we have different types of female journalists. You have the one who are already established and they already know their feminist side. And you still have those young ones who are really figuring out who they are and what they want to do. One of the very challenging example for me is our Iraqi colleague who covers gender issues in Iraq, very, very sensitively, covering them, bold, young voice. But at the same time, I get from time to time phone calls from her complaining that she was beaten up by her father or by her brother because she went to a cafe, they saw her smoking. She cannot have her own independence. So she is trying to balance between her, a journalist covering gender issues, where she herself is a story. So I find myself as an editor, trying to help this young journalist, and she's not the only case. We have journalists sometimes writing pen names when they want to expose what kind of sexual harassment they have been to, or other issues, very sensitive, they can't say it publicly. So here you find yourself as an editor covering a story, but it's a very inside story. It's part of your team member. So I think having the ability to give space for these people, for these voices, to evolve, to be able to express themselves is a key element of what we do. And I think this is part of what I've missed in my previous newsroom.
Thank you for that, Diana. And this idea that it is somehow our story, which perhaps is what draws many women to the sector, and why we see so many women actually leading the sector in the Arab region. Nora, if you could reflect on that from your own experience, both within perhaps the mainstream and also within AlManassa, and tell us a bit more about AlManassa.
Well, I was very lucky that I started in international media. So, sorry about that. I started first with an internship in the New York Times, and then I moved to the Washington Post, and then to Al-Masri Al-Yawm right before the revolution, and it was supposedly the privately owned liberal newsroom, and it was a large newsroom with more than 350 journalists. But yet I was able to notice, I mean, coming from outside gave me the ability to be shocked, you know, because I wasn't used to the norms in such a newsroom. So in Al-Masri Al-Yawm, for example, I noticed how women don't make it to the top. I was the managing editor of the Arabic website, but within the Arabic newsroom, women would only be journalists, or if she's promoted to a section head, it will only be lifestyle, for example. And this is the only area that women have room to grow. But aside from that, of course, when the revolution failed and we moved on, when we founded AlManassa, which is a collaborative journalism platform, it's a small organization mainly composed of editors and open to lots of freelancers and citizen journalists whom we work with to develop their stories and provide editorial guidance and mentorship and so on. And this gives us the room to develop ideas and push more towards progressive feminist narrative with a large number of contributors. When we started AlManassa, and of course to reflect also on the context we work in, we launched in 2016, and right on 2017 our website was blocked, which means that the domain almanassa.com, you cannot reach it if you are in Egypt. In Italy it's okay, but over there you can't. So we kept, trying to adapt to the situation by changing our domain name, and then it gets blocked with every good reporting and sensitive story that we do. We get blocked again, and so on, moving between domain names and struggling to reach our audience. But what we did when we launched AlManassa is we started with the editorial guideline and style book. We identify ourselves as a feminist, progressive, secular media organization. We started studying how gender balance can be achieved in content itself, not just in the organization. We started working on our own bylaws and internal policies and employment policies. For example, how can all this be gender sensitive? We work on our anti-sexual harassment policy inside the organization. But in all what we are doing, I believe that we have created for ourselves an island of the place we have dreamt to always work in. You know, the ideal conditions that you want to have, how to be inclusive to all religions and genders, and not just be, not think of gender as a binary, but also non-binary. But it still remains an island, and it's an island that is surrounded by very hostile waters, and also working under a lot of internal pressure and external pressure. And for example, one of the challenges I faced was the stereotype about leadership style, a woman leadership style. I started with participatory decision-making and democratic decision-making, and I found a lot of challenge with that because people were more ready to receive a Margaret Thatcher style of leadership, like we will follow even if we hate, but if you are democratic and participatory, you are perceived as indecisive and unsure about what you are doing, really. So this was a challenge. And also because of the security pressures, we work under legal security threat, financial threat all the time because of our budgets and the mode of work and all that. So the prolonged pressure on all the team members also challenges how much people are committed to the gender learnings that they have acquired over the years, because with extended pressure, they will explode in your face from time to time. And then there's also the perception of you as a woman leader, as a mother, who is supposed, or they perceive that is supposed to contain all those pop-ups and the explosions and so on. Aside from that, there are also challenges from within our own society and circles of civil society organizations or civil society actors who also are sometimes patriarchal in a sense. And they look at an independent media led by a woman as maybe a tool for a greater good, for example, and they'll feel comfortable to tell you what's good to do now, or make decisions for you at this moment in time in the greater struggle of Egypt for democracy and all that. Well, I doubt that they would have done the same thing if a man was leading an independent media organization.
So there are the patronizing attitudes. But do you ever feel, when working within a society, and in Egypt I think this is very particular, that is obsessed with controlling women from what they wear to what they think, what their ambitions are, and who they partner up with? I mean, the obsession with the personal life is really an overload. Do you ever feel that that puts you at specific risk, or puts other women who are already at risk because they are working within this sector at an additional risk, by virtue of the fact that they are women working within that context, which is preoccupied with the personal?
Yes, this is, yes, it's entrenched in the Egyptian society, but also it's not just in practices, but also I think in the laws. I mean, there are many levels of controlling and shaping and addressing this, yeah.
Yes, so yes.
No.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. But moving on now to Rawan, for you could tell us more about Arij, and also Arij has been very active in supporting gender equality and the protection of women journalists in the region. So a bit also about that, as well as your personal experience.
Thank you very much, Fatemah. Thanks a lot for all the people who made it after lunch to be here with us all. So in Arij, we support the ecosystem of investigative journalism in all Arab countries, mainly investigative journalists, fact-checkers, and protecting whistleblowers. All of those, our network, are facing threats daily and fierce threats all the time, including us in Arij and all the people who we are trying to support. We are trying to support them through empowering, networking, and innovation. Unfortunately, we live in a world, as Diana and Nora has said, in the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, where we are all feel that we cannot speak up and out what we want really to say. This is why, facing those threats, we decided in Arij to give investigative journalists and fact-checkers one-to-one safety clinics after the the prerequisite self-based online courses and trainings and workshops. Now every single journalist who work with us, and many of them publish in anonymous names and including fact checkers, they do one-to-one physical safety, one-to-one digital safety, one-to-one mental safety. So before going to the field interviewing harassed women, survivors, people who are out from torture from prisons, they need to be prepared. Legal safety with a lawyer from the same country they are covering, because in the Arab world, different Arab countries have different laws. And lately we added career safety one-to-one, because many of the female journalists in the region are deciding to leave this career. They don't want to be journalists anymore, although they have been safe personally, but with all those threats and publishing in anonymous names at the end, they don't want to do this. So we want to try to change this. And today I would like to say that in spite of all the threats, I am optimistic. I'm optimistic because on this panel we have Fatemah, Nora, and Diana. We have here Lina Atallah from Mada Masr, Saja Murtada heading our Arab Fact Checkers Network. We have women in the Arab region who did it. I did a lot of mistakes when I led a small team. I was a team leader, then I'm now leading a network in the region, and I made a lot of mistakes leading this. So I want to get advices, 10 advices for any female journalist who's trying to really be a leader in this field. First, ask for help. I was at the beginning very worried to ask for help. I said, I need to do it all. I know how to do it. So no, ask for help, and you will find that many people will be able to help. Embrace the female-centered work. When I led the first team, I said, I don't want to go into gender issues because they will say I'm a woman and this is why I am focusing on this. No, because I'm a woman, I know this very well, so I can really have a contribution to female-centered work. But be inclusive to all. As Nora said, all genders, all religions, all sects, ages, youth, old people. If you work only on gender issues alone, it will be a mistake. We need to be inclusive to everything. And as a woman, we always think, because we are multitasking more than men, and this is a fact for the people in the room, we think that everybody is multitasking. Our colleagues, our male colleagues, our female colleagues, and it's a mistake. No, not everybody is multitasking, and this is very important for a leader. Try to escape workaholic perfectionism. I would confess I was a workaholic perfectionist, and I always thought that this is the way that I need to be. No, it's a mistake. You can survive and do things when you are not a workaholic perfectionist. Many people will say there are no female leaders, and so they will go and say, we didn't find anybody. No. Find and create female leaders. I did it, and I can say it worked. So somebody who has a potential, at the beginning, she will tell you, I cannot do it, it's very difficult, but then no, when she tries it, she will manage to lead a smaller team, then a bigger team, and then be a leader in the field. It's very important that I, at the beginning, thought that only good work will speak for itself. There is no need for networking. This is maybe why it's my first time to Perugia. I never wanted to do this networking thing. I always focused that good work will speak on itself. It's a big mistake. You need to network. People need to know your work and need to know what you are doing. And learn to say no. Many times I said yes to things that bombarded me with more work. I needed to work very late to make things. The simple thing was to say no to this thing that you don't want to do. And as Nora said, they will tell you always about your management style. Don't be this, do this. No. Keep your management style, whatever it is. Believe in yourself, and then things will move forward. And the last, don't waste your time thinking, is it because I'm a female? As Nora said in the last of her talk, is it because I'm a female they are doing this? It doesn't really matter. Just don't waste your time thinking this and keep moving. It might seem like I have answers more than questions. It's not true. I still have a lot of questions, and I'm also questioning myself when I decide things, especially when it's connected to the safety of the journalists and fact checkers that I send them to work and do things to expose the wrongdoing in the region, expose corruption, do confrontation, investigative journalism. So I do question myself every day of things. But I can say, you can do it. Just believe in yourself. And then gender, leadership, and surviving can work. Thank you.
Thank you, Rawan. All very apt advice. But let me ask you, this need for us to be perfectionists, for us to go the extra mile, to not say no, this is really because we need to prove ourselves against a hostile environment. And I know that the advice that you're giving is obviously correct, but how possible is it really for us to adhere to it as women? I still think that there is a need, and all of us feel this drive, and probably other women in the field feel it as well, to overprove ourselves, not just in the workplace, but also to say that I am a professional, but I'm also a good mother, and I'm a good wife, and I made lunch on time, and I took care of all of my duties, even though I have to work so many hours. How do we really get around that reality?
I studied my undergraduate in Palestine doing media and sociology, and at that time, my question to myself was, why do I want to do media and sociology? And the main thing was to do role models about women in the region. And the first series I did was Pioneers. Over more than around 20 years ago, 18 years ago, I did this pioneering women from the Arab region. A scientist, an astronaut, Dr. Maryam Shadid. From Egypt, I did Dr. Stamia Timtami, the first who did genetics in Johns Hopkins in 1966 and got back to Egypt and found this. And all the 12 women, none of them knew each other. So none of them knew each other, but all of them said, we have to work 3 times more than our colleagues to prove it. That's a real problem. We don't need to think this way. If you are a good artist, a good journalist, a good scientist, a good engineer, you don't need to put this burden on yourself. I need to be perfect and do double, triple the work. You will make an impact in life, and you will do things without putting this burden on yourself. Because then you will be burnt out, you will be not happy in life, and happiness is very important. Despite all the challenges, yes, it's a hostile water, but we need to enjoy being in this fight. So just enjoy the surviving.
I'm looking at Nora and the smile on her face as you're saying this. Nora, would you like to reflect on this point?
I would love to be happy. Yes, but we are not just journalists. I am the founder, the editor-in-chief, and my job is not just to set the editorial policies or even just see the final copy of the story before it goes out. It's because we are independent media in hostile environments. We are underfunded, we are understaffed. It's very difficult to find good journalists to join the team because of the security issues and the security risk that is associated with our name. So I end up doing copy edits. Most of my time is going with the lawyers and the tax audits and and the advocacy for our license, the advocacy with the authorities. It's not just proving myself as a journalist or just proving myself as a leader of the organization and sticking to my management style and all that. But at the same time, you have to work twice as hard as well at home.
But with all those challenges, you need to enjoy it. Otherwise, it will be a misery. Every day, in the court, going to the court, having digital surveillance, having physical threats. If we stick to being that this is our situation and prisoners everywhere in the Arab world, and then we say, that's it, we are pessimistic all the time, we will never continue.
And Nora, a lot of what you're talking about also is those challenges that you face as a representative of the independent media sector. So it's that double bind that you have, and I think that is very true, and I think it speaks to everyone's experience, and I think it's really important to showcase that, because we've come to say there are so many women leaders. We look at you and we think, and look out into this room and think, there are so many good examples, and you're correct. We need to showcase them, but also not to be complacent in understanding that these women are withstanding a lot of pressure, and that doesn't necessarily assure us that there will be a possibility to replicate this moving forward, because it is so challenging. And you had mentioned when you were talking about this explosion, when will it explode? And I think we all live with that stress. When will it explode? Diana, if you could also reflect on this, and also you had mentioned, and if you would like to reflect on this, the networking, because I often think that women are outside of the traditional networks that we have within the Middle East, by which men can find their way. The coffee shop, the bar, the what have you, women are not necessarily within those spaces. So how do we also improve and confront that challenge and make network spaces that are promoting women's leadership in the media?
I want to build also on what Rawan said regarding the enjoyment, and then I'll get back to your point. I think it's being concerned as well. You feel part of it. You want to be not defendant, but you really want to challenge and keep what you're doing. I believe we're not seeing any light very soon. We're still in a tunnel in the region, politically and security-wise, economically, and definitely on women issues as well. But I believe we need to do what we are doing, because this is the only way out. I don't see that the changes will come soon, but we are in a battle. If we can say we are in a battle, authoritarian regimes are really getting more strong if you look at the geopolitics of the region. So our fight is a long fight. So I don't want to leave Lebanon. I love Lebanon. I want to stay there. I want to help or work with those who believe in a different country. And this is the network that comes. It's people like us who share our values, who share our vision, whether men or women or whomever, we meet together. This is part of the network. Not only here, but also in Beirut, in small cafe, in our newsroom, the people who share our vision. We connect with each other, we find each other, not only with geography limitations, but we have our own networks. It comes from work, it comes from culture, it comes from, we find maybe on a tweet. Sometimes we communicate with people we have never met on social media. So I think networking is organically evolving, because this is how we find our voices. We are not as strong as the authorities, but we have impact. We have a voice. And you see in the Arab world with those authoritarian regimes, they are trying to demonize anything related to women's rights and feminist movement in the region. And it's a global demonization, but in the region, because we still have a young voice, they are trying to tell you that you are related to the West, you are part of a movement, you are conspiring against our values. So you have a huge attack against you when you are working on a certain value, especially when it comes to women. So networking is a part of our survival mode, is to meet with people who think like us, because this is what's protecting us. The people, whenever there's an attack against freedom of expression or against something related to women, you will find this kind of network comes together organically. So we need to work on it, establish those kind of networks, but I think this is what's helping us.
Thank you. Nora, would you like to comment on this as well? The issue of the networking, and perhaps in particular, I wanted to ask you, because you had mentioned the idea that we're in a bubble, an island, that we've created islands for ourselves. And those islands also have certain specifications. We're mostly English speaking. We have access to certain networks outside of our countries as well. And this is a strength, but perhaps also a weakness in that it isolates us or puts us into silos. Do you feel that we're able to extend with this to a wider intersection of Egyptian or Arab journalists, women who maybe do not speak English, do not have the same access to education? Here, the intersectionality.
I think I'm personally very lucky to have Lina and Madam Masr in Egypt. And it was very reassuring at some points when I was able to share, reach out, like Rawan said, and found that I'm not crazy. It resonates, and there is somebody who can, who had the same experience or can put some light on what's happening. But I don't think we are doing enough. Yes, we should build bridges, we should know each other more. I just think that we are so overloaded that we don't invest enough in networking or meeting or expressing or building bridges between islands, regional islands, international islands, but we don't have the time to build those bridges. For what it was for us for the past years, I think what really helped at least keep our island intact in absence of the bridges we should build was, I think, the psychosocial well-being policies and programs and all that. It gave us the opportunity to reflect on our situation, do a self-critique of our own behavior and policies and all that, and plan for the future, get out of the newsroom in a retreat or something, and just spend the day talking about our work environment, how are we treating each other, how is the content, what is gender balance in the content itself. So this opportunity, I think, at least we should be able to afford to invest in that.
Rawan, you see work coming from across the region. The Arij network is quite extensive. Do you feel that there is a change in attitudes, especially when it comes also to issues such as gender balance in content? Is there a shift?
Yeah, it's very difficult to track always the impact of things because sometimes the impact needs time or years to achieve. But there are a few examples that give you hope. For example, we did an investigation about the Yemeni women who had, when they apply in Europe, even within the Yemeni embassies in Europe for the renewal of their passports, they said you should bring your brother or you should bring your father into this. Although the law in Yemen doesn't necessarily ask for this. So we did this investigation, and after that the embassies removed this regulation, which was not a law, and then the Yemeni woman will go alone and issue or renew her passport. So when this happens, yes, it's small impact, but it's for us a big thing to give us hope. That's, I think there are changes. We need to understand that we as investigative journalists, maybe around the whole world, we are less than 10,000 people, maybe all the journalists, we are not a lot of people, but we need to collaborate with NGOs, make this solidarity with others. So I think we need also to build bridges within outside of our journalism world, because sometimes I feel we talk to each other rather than talking to others who can help. Even policymakers, sometimes we say we don't want to talk to them because they will not do anything. Maybe they will do. So I think reaching out to different NGOs, different people, having sometimes international solidarity. When something happens in Egypt, in Jordan, in Morocco, sometimes we think we need to work only within this geography or this country. It's not true. Something in Italy, I remember many times that things, from Italy influence things that has been happening in Egypt and other places. So I think we need to think big and think that we can make an impact, and this impact can happen only if we plan for the impact. It's not only publishing the thing at the end from independent media, and we think this is the last, point in the line that we published this, it's broadcasted. We were part of, Pandora Papers, Panama Papers, Fence, and also we all publish. It's not, that's the beginning to do the impact, and so we need to build this impact and work on it.
I was just attending a session on transparency in this very room earlier today. And this impact, following up on the impact and making sure that audiences know that this is going for them is one of the main takeaways of that. So yes, connecting to that. Before I open up to the floor, Diana, changing shifts, even on the personal level or within the Daraj newsroom or within Lebanon, do you see that there is a change for better or for worse? How would you define that?
I wouldn't say for worse, definitely, but I think we're adding to the general discussion, which is important. Raising the bar on how we address topics. We have been bold in the topics we have covered, from the intimate desires of young women in the Arab world to the extreme violence that they are exposed to. Giving a space for all different types of what women are facing in the Arab world is something essential to us. And it's not only the topic, but it's also how you are dealing with it. What type of terminology, what type of approach, how is it being treated? This is essential when you cover the story. It's not enough just to raise the topic, but how you are making the story, what type of voice that you are giving is something also that we are discussing. Yes, we are getting a lot of backlash, but I think we're adding to the discussion. Sometimes the change could be reflected, as Rawan mentioned, in certain laws or changes, and this is essential. We are journalists. Our role is to expose, is to raise the bar when it comes to discussion, but it's the other parties in the society, lawmakers, progressive lawyers, or people who have a role to play in the society. All of us together, we can help make a change. But to us, it is essential to keep raising the topic, to be part of the discussion, and not to be intimidated by those who are trying to limit what type of stories we cover.
Thank you. Nora, do you see changes happening for better or for worse?
I'm hopeful. I don't think it's really, I mean, we are doing what we can, and like Diana said, and just sticking to what we're doing is in itself a progress, I think, because but from the time we started, for example, until today, things happened on the other side. For example, covering LGBT issues became illegal, or there are rules against it, actually. The rainbow flag, covering issues about LGBT community, it became delegitimized. But the idea is that when you're still doing it, when you're still committed to it, and you know that this in itself will put you on a risk, so this is progress. We haven't been charged for this yet, so I'm hopeful. I tend to stay hopeful for the future, so we'll see.
So raising that bar and keeping it up there and being focused on that. I think that's a great takeaway from this. I know from my own newsroom that we never considered gender balance in content to be a priority, and that only when we actually focused on this as an issue that we needed to deal with, that journalists started to recognize within the newsroom that there was another way to do things, that they could do it that way, and that it was a better way to move forward. And that was something that came with practice and with awareness. And so that change is possible, even when you don't necessarily have it on the agenda. So with that, I'd like to open up to the floor for questions, comments. Please introduce yourself as you're taking the mic. So I think we have a question over there.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Mithali Mukherjee. I'm a director of journalist programs at the Reuters Institute. Thank you for your chat today. Much of what you said resonated across many parts of the world, including South Asia, where I've been a journalist. I was interested to know your thoughts from all of you on what you see as the importance of mentorship for young female journalists, whether there's a way to do that in a more structured framework, and whether you think that is an important mechanism to also bring male journalists in to this conversation and ensure that there is a way that they can support young female journalists, particularly in regions like yours, where it is often difficult to not just practice it, but stay in the field. Thank you.
Who would like to pick that one up? Rawan?
Yeah, I think it's a very important point. Mentorship and structured mentorship is extremely important. It's not easy to find the right mentor at the right time for the things you need. And when you are an advanced leader, it becomes more even complex. But for junior journalists, I think it's very important. I had mentors who were male mentors, you know, and I think that our discussion is not excluding males. There are in this hall many males who are, you know, friends, colleagues, supporters of this work, and they believed so much in our gender-focused work. So I think mentorship, if it is good and structured and invested in time and trust, is very useful, but it's not easy. You need to find the right person, and in many cases, you need somebody who speaks your same language and knows the culture to be able, because if you have a mentor that is from far away, he or she will have, things that really doesn't work in your local community. I think also Global South collaboration is not as enough as it should be. It's North-South collaboration is stronger than Global South collaboration, and I think it's extremely important in festivals like this to collaborate with Global South.
And the question of incorporating men within the conversation. In your newsrooms, are men on board? Is there more resistance? What is the situation?
Of course, it's important to incorporate men, but now in our newsroom, the women presence is much more dominant than male presence, and it became naturally. So, of course, we have partners, and feminism and women's rights, it's the way of thinking. Sometimes you find men more feminist than certain women, and vice versa. We have to take into consideration what type of approach they have. And to answer the question of mentorship, I think mentorship is important. It depends on the size of the newsroom and the way it's working. We believe more in having a team member working with us, internship, long-term internship, because they will be able more to work with us, to see the newsroom, how we are treating with certain topics. So if we can mix mentorship and internship inside the newsroom, I think it's more beneficial for those who are part of it. And I agree with Rawan, the need for Global South to communicate and network more often.
Thank you. Nora, how receptive are men within your newsroom to accepting new ideas around gender balance in content or in the structure of the organization? You talked about how people relate to you also as a woman leader, but also in other aspects of work. Is there pushback or?
We are such a small team, so within our organization, it's very receptive, and it's actually part of the selection process to start with.
How is that? Could you?
Yeah, part of our testing and interviews and all that before somebody joins the organization has to focus a lot about the values and the gender perspective and all that. So we try to minimize the internal and the external struggles, at least by keeping the house in order. But because we are such a small team dealing with a large number of contributors, it's actually, this is where I find the problem, is we don't have enough female contributors to start with, whether from within Egypt or from the Arab region. And we see that women are more receptive because we also provide guidance and mentorship to those we work with. Women are more receptive to feminist ideas and a feminist perspective to the story they are suggesting for AlManassa to work on more than men. It's in our experience, it has been very, very difficult. And because these are people like Diana said, they're outside the newsroom and our interaction with them is limited. There's, I think, little impact we can do with the men who are resisting a different angle to the story and so on.
Okay. Other questions from the floor? Okay. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Annette Young, the host of the 51%, a show about women on France 24 English. We also have an Arabic version presented by Maya Saloon Nasir, as well as French and Spanish. First of all, I want to thank all of you for what you're doing because it's absolutely critical. And as you can imagine, in the last 10 years we've had the program on air. We've run a lot of stories from your region about women. I just want to pick up on a comment you were saying earlier about how some women are leaving the job because of fears over personal security. I'm curious to know what you feel can be done to address that situation. And also, I can see somebody go, where do we begin on that one? And also in terms of the constant theme that we hear from anybody whenever we interview them from the region, which is feminism is seen as a Western import. How do you overcome that? And thank you again very much for all your fantastic work.
All right. Diana, let's begin this time.
Thank you for the question. 2 points. I fully understand why certain female journalists tend to hide, and that's not only journalists, women in the public sphere, when they are intimidated or they get a huge backlash, they tend to hide. Personally, I am a person who's vocal on social media, mainly Twitter. So I experienced firsthand what is it like to be a target from time to time when you get bots, when you get attacks for being a woman, rather, what you have said. So I remember in the first days how I felt that my stomach is hurting, that I wanted to hide, but with time, I decided never to give up and not to listen to those. But I cannot give this advice to everyone because not all people, first of all, women should not be exposed to such kind of attack when they are targeted just for being women. And in the Arab world and all over the world, the attacks are becoming harsh with time, especially with the use of bots and regimes, and certain groups are becoming more powerful on using social media to attack and discredit certain persons, especially if she's a woman. So I think young women, female journalists, shouldn't give up on this tool. I know that sounds a cliche and easy to say, but I believe that this is our space as well. And giving up should not be an option. Maybe we can strengthen each other. We give more, not training, but support to these women who are being subject to such kind of intimidation. So to me, giving up is not an option. I think we should be there. It's our space, it's our rights that we're defending, despite all the difficulties. Of course, there are layers of what type of difficulties. Sometimes it's become hazardous security-wise, but this is something we should not give up easily. Our voice should not be taken, and this is something we should defend. The second point, what was it, the second point? Yes, I've mentioned that. I've mentioned that. We're always being labelized as being exporting. We are defending our voice. I'm being accused of this personally, that I'm using westernized agenda. Frankly, my response was keep working and keep believing in what we are saying true stories. We are saying true facts. And we have a strong narrative that we need to defend. Let them say what they say. I mean, we should not be intimidated by this. This is our right, this is our women and our people whom we are defending. And those who will label us, let them do it.
Nora?
Actually, the question gave me a flashback from 2011 when the revolution erupted in Egypt, and I was at that time working in Al-Masri Al-Yom. I was a managing editor. My boss was the editor-in-chief, a man, and he decided immediately, because there was clashes in the street, it was violent, and there was a curfew at some point at night. So he decided that only men will work and women can go home. And of course, men were the majority of the newsroom, so the newsroom can perfectly function without women. It's okay for them to stay home. But in my team, and at that time I was responsible for the website, the Arabic website, and the multimedia unit and the social media unit. These were under my responsibility, and me and my teams decided, no, we are not going home, unlike the rest of the newsroom. So we are the only ones who stayed, all the women stayed. And then the organization had to buy mattresses and make a room for women and another room for men. And until that day, when I ran into my old colleagues who worked with me at that time, they are very proud as women. They are very proud of this moment, and they still remember it and mention it. And I think part of making it safer is to stay in the battle, is not to run away from it. That's it.
And funding is a reality for those in this sector. So how does that impact this idea of agenda setting? And is it a hindrance for us to be able to convince others around us of this agenda and not that is imposed on us? Is there a way around us? Yes? Go on.
Thanks a lot. We collaborate with France 24. I can see in the room also DW, Deutsche Welle, BBC Arabic, and many. And I think after COVID-19, many female journalists and male journalists have been laid off from newsrooms and became freelancers. And many of them need real sustainability to stay in this career. So I think it's extremely important to know that, and I can see also our dear friend Henrik Granet from IMS, Idis from Journalism Fund, OSF are here as well. And I think this support makes this journalism in our region work. Arij has been for 15 years. We never got a single dollar from an Arab businessman or an Arab government to give us. There is a reason for this, because they don't want this work to continue. And so it's extremely important to get female journalists career support, get this female journalist who want to work on climate change a career path. You need to go to this forum, you need to network with these people, you need to contact this organization, you need to write in this platform. Otherwise, she will leave the career. And many excellent journalists left the career. They went to NGOs, they went to academia, they are no longer working in the field. So I think this is extremely important. I have been working as a journalist for 25 years, and I have been accused sometimes of having this Western agenda, but not too much. I think because people are not stupid. Our audiences in the region, they know your content. And if you are an honest, ethical content journalist, with time, you will prove that this is the right way forward. There will be people accusing you, there will be blackmailing, but continuing with ethics will make you always clear to your own community and your own field. It's a one mistake thing. If you really lie, and many of our journalists in the region did, and especially after the Arab Spring, after 2011, we used to think of this journalist that is really ethical, she's really ethical, and they lost all the credibility. So it's really your credibility. If you keep it, it's very, very difficult that your own local community will lose trust in you.
Unfortunately, we're already past time on the session, so we won't be able to take other questions right now, but our panelists are here if you want to ask them after we're done. Please join me in thanking these amazing women, not just for their time today, but for all the work that they do. Merci.